John Stoj is an intentional investor out now on Epsilon Theory YouTube. You are going to love this conversation with Stoj Boy. We talked about how it's hard to know what you can do until you've had to do it. That theme shows up over and over and over again in his story. We talked Wall Street to running a sushi business and back again, kind of, which is a crazy career progression you're never going to see coming. And we talked about all the friends along the way, the high school buddy who gets him his first job on Wall Street as an intern while he's still at college, down to the one near the end who he starts the sushi business with, and then the person who pulls him into a multi-level marketing scheme of life insurance before he finds a better way to do it. Jack Forehand, let's roll some clips.
It's like a lot of the hard things that we go through, right? People have used this analogy many times, but to be tempered, to get to the point where you can be a little stronger when you need to be. It's hard to know what you can do if you've never had to do it. And I literally I found a tie. God knows, I probably borrowed one of my dad's neckties and just put on a tie and a shirt and a pair of khakis, got on the train, and an hour or so later, I'm sitting in an office in Amora on Maiden Lane. Anyway, so that was it. They're like, okay, well, can you start tomorrow? I'm like, sure. And literally, that's how my Wall Street career started. The first evening that we have a baby across the hall from us, and she's on call, and I get a call from my general manager at the sushi shop that there's a problem and I need to come to the store, and I can't because of what if she gets called in? She can't not go. So anyway, point is, right then and there, I looked at her, I'm like, I got to get out of this business. I thought for years that I was choosing investments and winners for the portfolios that I was managing. And despite the fact that we outperformed our indices and looked like stars, and it looked like we were choosing the right investments, it was just because we were taking risk in different ways. And so if I'm coming at it with this, in my opinion, knowledge that of what I cannot do. But you don't know what you can't do until you try it and you fail at it, or you see where you're like, oh my God, I didn't fail, but I really should have.
Welcome to The Intentional Investor with Matt Zeigler, where he and his guests explore the intersection of investing and life, portfolio and purpose. Nothing in this podcast is investment advice. Nothing in this podcast is advising you to buy or sell any security or to do anything with your money. Seriously, you should only act on investment advice from someone you know and who knows your unique situation. We are not that person. Matt Zeigler is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments, and the opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments or of Second Foundation Partners. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of Sunpoint Investments.
You're watching The Intentional Investor right here on Epsilon Theory YouTube. I'm Matt Zeigler, and my guest today, I'd like to think Don Henley himself would have put it, but I can see you. Your sushi better not be left out in the sun. You got your hair combed back and your nerd glasses on, baby, and I can tell you our love for you will still be strong after the stoys of summer have gone. And then who can forget the great Monica and Brandy duo, who I like to think would have said, you need to give those asset fees up. Had about enough, it's not hard to see. The stoy is mine. I'm sorry that you seem to be confused that money doesn't belong to fee only me. The stoy is mine. And if Don Henley, Monica, and Brandy weren't enough, the best days of the week himself, the weekend, he would have put it, ha 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 ha. Look what you've done. Ha 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 ha. He's a mother-loving star boy, or he's a mother-loving stoy boy. I can read my own notes sometimes. I'm saying it verbatim. He's not the Taco Bell of high finance, and he's not the Chipotle of sushi either. He's the stoy boy, stoy boy, stoy boy, stoy boy, stoy boy. Come on, yeah. Did I get the song right? Mr. John Stoj, welcome to The Intentional Investor.
Oh, well, thank you, Matt. Thanks for, and obviously thanks for that intro. I always actually think a lot about what would people do if their last name didn't rhyme so well with things. I'm just lucky that way.
You are just lucky that way. Well, but okay, start here, because this was my education was, I didn't know this was how to pronounce your name. And then I find out this makes so much sense. That's why the Twitter handle is Stoyboy. So do I have this right? You were picked on with this at first, then it evolved into like a badge of honor.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I think not everybody. I said this before in various times in my life, but I never want anybody to be bullied. But it's a weird thing that once if you go through it and you come out the other side and you can build up a little toughness and a little thicker skin. It's not the worst thing in the world. And so yeah, I had that in grade school. I had some bullying and people would call me Stoj boy and doughboy and all that kind of stuff because I was a little pudgy at the time. And I couldn't stand it, right? And then years went by, and I kind of forgot about it. Got into college and remember I could still remember going down the hallway in our dorm and I hear the old Cosmos cheer, which da 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 da. And so I had the Cosmos cheer, and then they said "Stoj boy," and I was like, "Whoa, wow, did I hear that correctly?" And it was great because of it was like that was the full circle moment.
Now I'm only mad because I picked the wrong Cosmos cheer. I was trying to do it. I did the Cosmos soccer team theme song, which I was like, it's the Average White Band. It's actually a really great song. And I was like, oh, I know it's Cosmos. Damn it. So close. All right. I'm only foiled on that. It is weird too, because you don't wish bullying on anybody, but I'm right there with you. Like, you got to learn thick skin and you got to kind of learn it at a young age. I think there's something important there, right?
Yeah, it's I think it's like a lot of the hard things that we go through, right? Yeah, people have used this analogy many times, but to be tempered, to get to the point where you can be a little stronger when you need to be. It's hard to know what you can do if you've never had to do it, and so to know that you can stand up to folks, to know that maybe words can hurt, but they don't kill you. Those things are important lessons to learn. And like I said, the earlier you learn it, the better, because of, as we know, the failures or stumbles, the farther you go in life, they do get more difficult to overcome.
Yeah. It's kind of like those, if you're doing it right, your biggest losses are always in front of you in the investment world. And also in the personal world, if you're doing it right, those like the adversity just gets bigger and bigger over time. All right, take me all the way back. Where in the country do you grow up? What's mom and dad do? How many siblings you got? Give me something to work with here.
All right. Well, so I'm an only child, and I took for years I took as a compliment that people would tell me, "Oh, I didn't think you were an only child." After they got to know me for a while, and they would find that out, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's good, right?" And now, at this point, I don't even know what that means anymore. But at the time, because I was like, in a sense, almost envious of people with siblings, and also, you heard negative things about only children being selfish or whatever, and so I guess I always took it as a compliment that they thought I wasn't. But now I just figured that it's like, well, that's strange. I wonder what made them think that. But only child, grew up in little small town in New Jersey called Garwood. And when I say small town, I mean it was small. It was Garwood is 7/10 of a square mile. But like many towns in New Jersey that aren't far from New York City, is surrounded by other towns, and so like there wasn't. It's not like you had to drive from one town to another. The surrounding towns were right there. But our town was pretty close knit. Everybody knew each other essentially. I went to the same grade school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and knew all the teachers. You knew the mayor. You knew the police chief. Everybody knew each other in our town. And it was very Americana. I really loved it. I loved growing up there. And so it was, I mean, you couldn't wish for for more for a childhood. I almost wish, my son could have that a little more, because we live here in Atlanta now, and it's a bigger city, and there isn't, that kind of community, but it is what it is. Life changes.
It is what it is. How do mom and dad, like, how do you end up in Garwood? That's somebody from there?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. My dad got pulled, sort of, involuntarily to Garwood by my mom. But my mom ended up there, basically because of the Depression. My family, on my mom's side, had a farm in upstate New York, and my grandmother got married, and it was pre-Depression, and then the Depression happened. My grandfather, amazingly enough, my grandfather never didn't work during the Depression, but he would travel from state to state. And so he went from New York to Connecticut, and then Connecticut to New Jersey, because of people told him there was work, and he found a job in Garwood. And then finally he's like, you know what, we're gonna end up staying here, so family, come on down. And that's how they ended up in little old Garwood, because Garwood is such a small town, but it had a number of factories, paper mill, which is where my grandfather worked, and they settled there. And then years and years later, when my parents, after they got married and they were looking for a house, they just happened to find one in Garwood because of, I think my grandmother, told them that there's a house for sale that you might want to look at. And my dad had only lived in the city.
The beauty of small towns. Everybody
Right,
knows. They're like, oh,
exactly.
Susie's moving. Do you want a house?
That's exactly that.
Yeah,
that,
that's the
that
way it
that's
works.
really very close to what happened. And so my dad did not want to leave the city. He only lived in he grew up in Passaic, New Jersey, which is another really small town, but it's a massively packed in city town. And so he thought moving to Garwood was moving to the country, and he was worried that he wouldn't be able to sleep because it would be too quiet. But he ended up being okay.
Yeah, he didn't long. Yeah, he didn't long suffer insomnia, I'm sure. Okay, well, so what do mom and dad do? Because this is the other part of small town reality. Like, you got to find jobs. We know, like, grandpa got the paper mill job there. What about mom
Yeah.
and dad?
Yeah. So my dad, he was an electrical engineer, and he had a job, a few towns over. He worked for a number of companies in New Jersey. He worked for Edison. Edison's one of Edison's companies. In fact, like, in Menlo Park, when the Wizard of Menlo Park, Thomas Edison had his labs there and stuff like that. My dad actually worked in one of the old buildings that Edison used to walk. So it's
that's
kind of
cool.
neat. And then he went. Other companies had offices there, and he ended up working for a defense contractor in the end, that he stayed with for the rest of his career. My mom she did a number of things because of she was sort of fighting the feminist fight before like people knew that it was being fought. And I guess I should say some of this stuff might sound kind of weird when I'm talking about the timing, but my parents were kind of older when they had me. So I was born in 1970, but my dad was 40, and my mom was 40, and so in those days, and that was the first child for both of them, first marriage for both of them. Obviously, that in those days that was a bit out of the ordinary. But that's why when I talk about this stuff, my mom being sort of pioneering in this feminist idea, she got out of high school and took an office job as a secretary in one of the factories next to the one where my grandfather worked, and worked for a while in that, and worked her way up in a number of different business jobs, and eventually she just got frustrated because she knew the work that she was doing. She became a buyer for an industrial products company. And she knew that all the men in the office were making more money than her. And she got really angry about it at one point. And she confronted her boss, and he's like, "That's just the way it is. It's just, sorry." And so she got angry. So she went back to college in her mid-30s. And she said, "Well, what am I going to do for a living?" And her main goal was to get a job where the men were paid the same as the women. And so that was what she was looking for. And she figured out that public school teachers were paid by contract, and it didn't matter whether you were a man or a woman. You were paid the same if you were teaching, such and such a class. And so she decided to become a teacher so that she wouldn't sort of get underpaid versus the men in her field.
Wow, that's I don't know. It's remarkable on a bunch of levels. How did she tell you or explain this story to you as a child, or did you not figure this out till later?
I didn't figure it out till later. Eventually, we talked about it. I was probably already in college or after, graduating from college, and we talked about that. That wasn't like a childhood kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because she did a number of things after I was born. So she started working before I was born as a teacher. And then after I was born, what was more, I guess, typical of the era is that she stopped working in order to raise me for the, first 5 or so years. And then she went back to work part-time, but she ended up working for the town. She as the town tax collector,
Nice.
which was actually an elected post. So she actually won 2 elections. And the only reason that she didn't run a third time, and you'll see this as this is a similar idea. She wanted a raise, and they wouldn't give her a raise. They said there's only so much money in the till for a tax collector to be paid in our little borough of Garwood, New Jersey. And so she said, "Well, fine, then I'm not running again." And they couldn't find anybody else to run for the position, because tax collector is not like the greatest job in the world. And they finally convinced a guy to run. And the way they convinced him to run is they raised the compensation by about 2 or 2.5 times. So she was responsible for this next guy getting a nice big raise to do the same job that she was doing.
She pushed the wage gap wider.
Yes.
Oh man, that's rough. All right, so young John, not being told these stories yet, but it's certainly in the air in the house. Like, what are you into as a kid? Are you a sports kid? Or I know you're a music guy now. Were you a music kid? What were the interests?
I was a being outdoors kid. Our house backed up to what we just called the woods. And there was like this area where Garwood met with Westfield, which is a town right next to us, and hadn't been that developed somehow. And and we would just go out, my friends and we were lucky enough to have kids in our neighborhood, and the door would open. If it was the summer, we would leave the house in the morning and come back maybe for lunch and then leave again. But we would be in the woods, building forts and doing all the stuff that kids do, in the outdoors. Until I was, 8, 9, 10 years old. Whenever computers and video games started really popping up, because then I did become a bit of a video game addict, and it was all new at the time, right? This was Atari 2600 days when my first friend got an Atari. It was like the most amazing thing in the world. And I literally had from Radio Shack one of the Pong games, and
Nice.
I thought I was the coolest kid.
Well, I mean, come on. If you're the house with Pong at it, that's like unstoppable, right?
Yeah. But it was never very sporty. I regretted later, but I mean, you don't know at the time, but I definitely I never played any sports growing up, which is too bad. Luckily our son does now, but I did not.
Okay, so what are you taking to in school? Go all the way through to high school if you want on this, or stick here. Besides video games and playing in the woods, which is a northeastern Pennsylvania kid, I know all about the woods, and it can be 6 trees or it can be 600. What are you getting into, like, school wise, or what do you like in learning?
I loved school because I was good at it, I guess. And I don't think there was a class or a subject that I didn't particularly like, other than gym class. Strangely enough, was because wasn't a sports kid. But yeah, there were in our little town, basically, there was another kid, this girl and myself, and we competed constantly all the way through 8th grade as to who was going to be sort of the top, get the top grades in our class. And so, I was definitely competitive with all that, and I liked it. And then it's funny how once I got to high school, I still kept doing my schoolwork hard, but as high school wore on, I got less competitive over grades, and I just sort of wanted to, I kind of wanted to just be more of a, I don't want to say more of a kid, but I went from being a geek from a get as high a grade as possible standpoint to just trying to, I guess, enjoy life as a 16, 17-year-old.
Are you into music yet at this phase? Like, where's that start to play a role in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I always, for some reason, I always loved music, which is funny because my dad never really cared for it. He never listened to music. And my mom, she never would at home either. And so I don't know where I got it from.
Car, like anything, like just no music. You just weren't a music on household.
Yeah, we were not. They had, and I still have it in the basement now. They have this really nice, at least nice for the time, 1960s Fisher stereo, and an LP player, and but I was the only one who played anything on it. They had a little record collection, but they never put the record on the platter. I was the only one who would do that as a kid. And going through their record collection, there were literally 2 albums that I would play, because they were the only 2 that weren't either show tunes or classical music. And so there's Marty Robbins, Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs, and then a Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons album, and I don't know which album that is anymore, but I played those albums till the grooves were worn out, before I finally convinced my mom to let me drive me to Harmony House, the record store, and buy my own records with my allowance, and then I just kept going on from there. So my parents had to deal with me listening to music as opposed to me listening to their music.
Oh, that's wild. Now, do you end up, as you start acquiring music on your own, are you acquiring music because of stuff like with video games, you find out what video games are cool because you go to somebody's house and you find out, like, you became a Pong kid. Who are you musically?
I think it was just like my mom would have the radio on, so I would hear, how do any of us know this stuff? I guess, so this would be an only child thing because of a lot of people have their older siblings to hear what they're listening to. And I didn't have that. So I really don't know. I guess just watching TV and hearing stuff, but I do know, like, the first 45 I bought was Michael Jackson. One of the Rock With You. That was the first four.
Excellent choice. 45. I'm impressed. Good taste.
And the first LP that I bought, you'll be less impressed. was the Walter Murphy Band, A Fifth of Beethoven, which is very disco-y,
It's a
classical
classic
music.
though, but that's a classic.
Yeah.
Great dance song.
And so yeah, I just sort of went on from there, and it just eventually classic rock became a thing, and I was very much into prog rock. So Yes became my favorite band, and when you were at a age where you could have a favorite band and argue with your friends, like, no, this is the best band in the world, your band sucks, so I went through all that, and then my one thing that is strangely enough where like I say, that my parents didn't listen to music, but they wanted me to be musical, in a sense. So they got me drum lessons. I have no idea why drum lessons, but so I
It's
took.
usually the last instrument any parent wants their child to say, I want.
Isn't it the funniest thing?
Yeah.
But they got me drum lessons, and I never had anything more than a snare drum in the house.
Sure.
And what I really remember from my drum lessons, frankly, was a drum pad.
Yeah. I know that sound
And
well.
yeah. And so, like, I don't know when, I don't know what age I was. Maybe I was double digit age, probably high single digit age. And my parents were like, here, look at this. And it's literally a block of wood on a slight slant with
The little
a
piece of
piece
leather or
Yes.
plasticky stuff, whatever.
like a rubber pad on there. And they're
It's
like,
so
"Here's these drumsticks."
disappointing. It's so disappointing.
And it was crazy disappointing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And like, are you doing like snare drum, like you're learning paradiddles and stuff? Like, is it that kind of like tut 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 tut,
Yeah,
like doing
just
all that crap?
the
Oh, God.
the most basic stuff you could possibly imagine. I mean, basically keeping time. Let's put
Right.
it that way. Which ended up being valuable because I did not stick with the drums. And then eventually everybody joined the band. Our school was small enough, so that 40 maybe or so kids in my grade.
Oh wow.
So everybody got an instrument. At some grade, I don't know what, third, fourth grade, everybody got an instrument. I chose the clarinet. So then I played the clarinet for 4 years. Don't know why the clarinet, but that's what I played. And so I stopped the drums. I was playing the clarinet, and I did that through 8th grade. I remember playing the 8th grade graduation, pomp and circumstance. I mean, that's what we had to do.
Honking it out on your little student clarinet. Yeah, it's a
Yep,
good time.
yep. And then eventually, and so then I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I gotta learn something else, and that's when I picked up the guitar and sort of just went from there.
Fantastic. We all need that learning curve, and it's good to pick up and put some stuff down too. There's something about like quitting those instruments along the way. I think there's actually some value in learning how to stop things when you're a kid.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of like when you're playing. Like I'm not a sports guy, but because our son plays soccer, and he's learning it, and he's going up through the progression. So he's going to be 12, and he's been playing soccer for 4 or 5 years now, and now we're learning different positions. Like he's starting to zero in on a position he wants to play and that kind of thing. But we were doing summer league this year, and somebody said that one of the things you need to do in summer league is take advantage and play every position, even the ones you don't think you ever want to play, right? Because he gives you a sense for the playing field. Well, and it's like that in music. I could keep the beat because if I did spend time hitting that stupid piece of rubber on the drum pad, and then and I could read music. I can't any longer, but I could read music when I did the clarinet. And so you put all that together, and then somebody hands you a guitar, and then you could be a little more free form. But I've never been a good guitar player. But I think if there's anything that I have for it. Like if I ever do play with other people, I think I have a feel for just the flow, right? And that probably comes from my earlier music experience, not from any guitar lessons that I took.
That's so interesting. I'm such a believer in it's like building your talent stack or whatever you want to call it. These things do compound, just not in the ways that we so often think because it's not linear.
Yeah.
What happens? So high school comes, you're less serious about competitive school, but you're still clearly a good student. How do you decide, like, what's the college decision look like? What's going on there?
So this goes back to, it's funny. It's so funny that you mentioned the only child thing, and I didn't, or maybe I mentioned it. I don't know. You asked me about it. But
I asked about siblings. I did prompt this because I actually wasn't sure. So, okay.
So again, I didn't have any older siblings to have gone to college or thought about it or any of that kind of stuff, right? So, and I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't into sports, right? So I didn't watch any college sports. So I wasn't attached to like Penn State or USC or whatever. But, and here's the but, it would be impossible not to have heard of Notre Dame. You can't in the United States, I don't think, in a certain era, right, without actually at least having heard of Notre Dame. So when people started thinking, where do I want to go to college? I'm like, I've heard of Notre Dame. Maybe I'll go there.
The name? They got a cool looking logo. That little guy looks pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was on my list. And my parents had this idea that I should consider going to a Catholic school. I hadn't gone to any Catholic schools before I grew up Catholic.
I love these ideas that your parents keep interjecting, where it makes no sense on paper, but they're like, yeah, Catholic school. Like, I've never been to Catholic church. You should probably do Catholic school. That seems good.
Yeah. Well, they're like, well, we're Catholic. Maybe our kids should go to a Catholic school for college. Okay.
All right.
And
not very feminist to your mom, by the way.
No, right? But you know what's really funny is that from that side, from the Catholic side, from that standpoint, I also learned later in life that the Catholic Church in our little town that I went to and that my parents got married in was like super progressive, and I had no idea. It was not a conservative Catholic church. I thought all Catholic churches were the same. And frankly, it's funny when you're a kid, you don't know anything different, right? Just do your thing. It was in music class, it's 6th, 7th, who knows what grade, maybe, but it was in a music class in grade school, and we were singing some song, and I said something about the Catholics singing a song, and somebody else in the class, another kid, said something about his church. I'm like, what do you mean you're a church? And I'm like, oh yeah, well it's apparently there are two Protestant
first time
churches
this enters your brain that there's like another church kids go to.
Yes, and so this is how like oblivious I was as a kid. I'm probably still like this in a way. But I didn't know that there were other churches. I thought that because there were multiple masses every Sunday, that I was just missing the other kids. I thought everybody
like, here in the other science class. That was actually a reductive reasoning thing. Awesome.
And so anyway, but it's all connected to the idea that I don't know that my mom thought that it would be less progressive than the church that they were attending, which is kind of funny, right? And frankly, it's the same thing. So when I got to Notre Dame, I don't know how, and let's just say I applied, I got in, I went to Notre Dame. There weren't any challenges there for me. Like everything went swimmingly through high school. I did all my things. And I mean, honestly, I have no idea how people do it nowadays because the competitiveness is so much greater. There's when you've got a situation where I think the size of, take Notre Dame, for example, but I think the size of the class has increased by, who knows? I think I've looked it up, 10% over the size of my graduating class in 1992. But the number of people applying has skyrocketed, right? And so I don't know. I feel like I would never get in if I was applying nowadays, but that's another topic. But I was put, I don't know how, like at Notre Dame, you don't get to choose where you live, what dorm you live in. They figured it out for you. And I don't know how they did it. They shoved all of us weirdos into this one dorm. And it was the best thing in the world because of none of us were legacies. That's probably another a reason why we got stuck in this dorm. And there were very few people with much money. So it was like the blue collar dorm. And I felt so at home, and I don't know whether they did that on purpose. I'd like to think they did. But I'm not sure. But I felt so at home, and that's how I ended up with the kids, chanting "Stoj Boy" in a good way. And it was everybody there. Nobody was like I don't want to insult anybody when I say this, but nobody was like a crazy Catholic. We went to mass because it was it's a Catholic school, and we had a chapel in our dorm, and we go every Sunday. But nobody, like, nothing was in, I don't know. I never felt particularly like it was a religious school, which just seems so strange to think now, looking back. We went to mass every Sunday, but it didn't feel religious. And so, and also, like, one of the things I really liked about Notre Dame, it was the confidence that the school had in their mission. And what I mean by that is that we had to take philosophy classes and theology classes. And you could choose which ones to take. And I took classes where we read things like the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? So we learned that the flood story was not just a biblical story. It was something that other cultures had as well. It was like a thing, right? And so we learned about all this stuff that could plant potential seeds of doubt in your mind about, there's a word for it, but the where some people believe that, say, the Bible is fully real.
Right. The literal interpretations, the dogmatic stuff, all that. And
right.
Hey, nuts.
Where they didn't have the problem. They didn't have a problem with letting you know that there are other things out in the world. So I think I took that sort of, began that a seed in my mind that allowed me to start thinking, okay, this is the way something's been presented for a long time, or whatever. But maybe there's another way to look at it, and maybe I need to dig a little deeper, to do more research into whatever subject that is.
What's the declared major for undergrad in Notre Dame?
I graduated with a management information systems degree. That was my concentration. Notre Dame just has a Bachelor of Business Administration, but concentration in MIS, because I was a computer geek growing up. I said video games earlier, but it was really computers and video games. And so I did a lot of I took programming classes when I was in grade school as well. So I was always into typing at the computer in addition to playing video games. And so when I got to college, I thought I was just going to graduate and start working, as a computer, whatever computer people do after they graduate. I don't even know, program something.
Right. Somebody gives me money for this now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't end up doing that, but that's what I thought I would do.
So then what happens? You graduate. You don't just go out of there with your, your floppy disks and start making them in, plugging them in and programming. What happens after graduation?
Well, so I started work in the real world the week after graduation. I didn't take any time off. But the reason I was able to do that, frankly, was like one of these serendipitous things. Total luck. Was a year prior. I always in summer for my summer jobs, I did usually something manual labor. Let's put it that way. I worked for a HVAC company one summer installing air conditioners. I worked for an electrician, roughing in houses in new construction. I things like that. I worked for a flooring contractor, putting in gym floors in high schools.
Whose knees doesn't love that, right?
What's that?
Whose knees don't love a good flooring job?
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I had my first time I've ever had heat exhaustion in an air conditioned gym, hauling pieces of oak.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. But that's the kind of thing I did, and so it was the summer between junior and senior year. I hadn't lined up whatever job I was going to do yet, and I never got internships. I don't know why. I just figured I would come home and get a job doing something. And so it was very early in the summer, and I got a call. I do remember as well, sitting in my parents' kitchen, and the phone rings. I pick it up, and it's a friend of mine from high school, and he also went to Notre Dame with me. Actually, is my classmate at Notre Dame as well. But he says, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing this summer?" And I'm like, "Well, nothing really. Just still trying to figure out my job situation." And he says, "Okay, can you get into the city this afternoon?" I was like, I think I looked at my watch and it was 10 o'clock. I'm like, I guess so. Why? He's like, they need somebody here where I'm working. And so my buddy's cousin, this is the way things work, right? My buddy's cousin worked in the IT department at Nomura Securities in Manhattan. And so my buddy worked there as well. And they needed somebody quickly on the trading desk to be trade support. And I'm like, I'll do it. And I literally I found a tie. God knows, I probably borrowed one of my dad's neckties, and just put on a tie and a shirt and a pair of khakis, got on the train. And an hour or so later, I'm sitting in an office in Nomura on Maiden Lane, and they're like, well, I don't even know how they interviewed, a 20-year-old for this job, but basically it was like they just needed somebody to take orders off the trade tickets and type them into the system, right? Because the traders just wrote their orders, and then trade support would type them into the system to send the trades back to the back office to get executed. Anyway, so that was it. They're like, okay, well, can you start tomorrow? I'm like, sure. And literally, that's how my Wall Street career started.
So like junior to senior year of college, that summer, you're taking the train into the city every day, and you're basically working as trade support at Nomura because a buddy's brother or whatever said,
Yep.
Hey, are you free? Can you get here today?
Correct. And up until that point, I knew nothing about Wall Street. I didn't think about whether there was a difference between stocks and bonds, any of that. But this job was on the mortgage-backed securities trading desk, and so from that moment, basically, I became a bond guy, and very much sort of, we beat your chest and And eventually after I graduated, then I went back to Nomura to work, full time on the desk as well. Again, starting out starting again in a similar trade support role, but then working up into becoming an assistant trading and things like that. But it was more like, these stock guys are fools. Only bonds matter. Just because that's all I knew, because if I didn't know anything about it before, and then I got plugged into this desk, and this was very much a sort of this was early '90s, early to mid '90s, Masters of the Universe days. Cool stuff was going on in the mortgage-backed securities markets. It was super neat. Securitization was still fairly new. Nomura was doing cool stuff, and so I got to be part of that, and watch stuff happen, and like things that mean nothing to anybody nowadays. But Nomura, our desk did the first $1 billion CMO, and things like, it was like neat stuff was happening, and so I had a ball. I had a ball doing that work.
So how long? Because you stick with the mortgage stuff for like a good while here, right? It's a series of jobs.
Yeah. I did. I liked the idea of it. I liked the whole concept I liked the concept of securitization. It sounded like it made a lot of sense to me. Packaging up these cash flows, and I got to know I watched the structurer on the desk, put these deals together, and of course this is so esoteric. I don't know why I would even go into it, but I'll say so. These deals were deals with these are all government, Fannie and Freddie and Ginnie loans. So you weren't thinking about credit risk, but you were thinking about prepayment risk, and you were structuring these transactions and tranching up the deals. And then the last desk I worked on was our derivatives desk, and so there were all sorts of crazy bonds that they built, right? IOs, POs, inverse IOs, inverse floaters, all these kind of goofy structures that they would design bonds for specific purposes, which I thought that was great. I really loved it. And I thought mortgages were cool. And it's only because that's all I knew. And that probably hurt me a little bit career-wise, because of years later, I was given the opportunity to become the sort of the head banker to manage this is a couple jobs in the future, and I'm at First Chicago, turning into Bank One, and they own First USA, and so they're going to securitize credit card debt, and they offered me. They said, "Do you want to? We're going to either hire somebody to be the new credit card banker, or you could be the credit card banker." And I'll be like, no. I'm doing the mortgages. I like home equity and subprime and stuff like that. Who would do credit card? That's so boring. And but in the end, obviously, the volume at a bank that owns a major credit card issuer is going to be on the
It's kind of a real business.
Yeah,
Kind of a real business.
versus us trying to scratch and claw our way into specialty finance, home equity deal.
So, all right. So it's New York City to start. Do you start bouncing around for these other jobs? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of my mom in me, as we all have in our parents, and so I have a little bit of impatience, and then I have the desire to push back and get frustrated, like she did leaving her job to go to college. I sort of, in a way, did the same thing. So my timing was, I feel like this is my career thing. I mean, I have nothing to complain about, but But I feel like also you could say my timing was always like just a little bit late for almost every job that I've ever taken. Because the way that the street promoted, created traders for the longest time was that trade support would get trained to trade. And if they had a talent, they would then get put in a seat, see if they could make some money. And if they could, then they suddenly were traders, right? And so that was what Nomura was doing. And the year that I was still in college, one of the guys doing trade support was promoted to become a trader. He got a chance to get a seat. So he got a seat and he did great and he made a ton of money and he became, a successful trader over the years. I assumed that I would do that same thing. And so I got, I started working there after college and did my thing. I'm like, psych, what's this? This is great. And then a year later, these other people show up and I'm like, what are these guys doing? They're like, oh, well, those are the new trader trainees. I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, I thought that's what we were doing. And so Nomura started an MBA program that year. And now they were hiring kids out of business school to become the traders. And there was no clear path from trade support into trading anymore. So I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do here? I guess I'm going to go to business school. And so that's basically why I went to business school. And I assumed that I would then go to business school, come out, and then get a job as a trader because that's what happened. That's not what happened because although I did interview for trading jobs after business school, the question I got was from several places was why would we hire you because you were there and you left. You basically were on the desk, you left. So that was dumb on your part. It's basically what
so they were like, you raised a red flag on yourself. Like by you opting out, even though they were like, we changed the rungs on the ladder in front of you.
Right.
It worked against.
And it didn't matter that I tried to explain it. That was the way it was interpreted. And again, by more than one shop that I interviewed with. So I figured I had to get back and do it in a different way. And that's how I ended up getting a job at KPMG, doing structured finance consulting. And then that started the whole sort of other branch of my career.
So first off, business school. You go back, you get the MBA. Where you get the MBA from? Do you like that stuff? How's that affect you?
Yeah, I went to Chapel Hill for my MBA. Keenan Flagler Business School is not a famous name, but UNC Chapel Hill was great experience. Relatively small class. That was another thing that I did sort of by feel. I left a deposit at Berkeley. I almost went to Haas, but when I went to the campus at Chapel Hill, I just felt sort of at home there. And it's one of these things where you've got to sort of follow. I'm a gut follower, and that's where I felt like I could go to school here. So, and like I said, fantastic experience, no complaints, whatsoever, and got a really well-rounded education. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to go to just a finance school. I wanted to touch as many aspects of business as possible, which is, maybe a little strange because my mind was still that I was going to go back and do bond trading. But so why did I want to know these other aspects of business that much? I don't know. But I think it's just curiosity, more than anything else.
It's really interesting. There is a theme here of really deep focus in one area, but then this gut feel of just getting lost in the woods, like going out and playing and being like,
Yeah.
oh sure, yeah, it's a part-time job. Like this summer I'm going to do this, but then I'm going to go back and be ultra focused on these other things later. So, I mean, we all know that like the spoiler here is you get into structured finance in the mid to late 90s and you're 10 years and the clock is counting and less away from not being in the best industry to be in the world for job security, to say the least.
Yeah.
What's the story?
Yeah, I mean, it's none of us, I mean, so my structured finance experience went from, again, doing some really cool stuff. Even when I was at KPMG, like our little office in New York, we audited structured finance transactions, but we also did true consulting gigs as well. And one of them was working on the first royalty securitization, the issuance of Bowie Bonds. People always
Oh,
think
no
of
kidding. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the music rights royalties.
Yep.
No kidding.
So David Pullman, who came up with the idea, brilliant idea, he didn't know how to structure a deal, and I don't know, somehow got connected with our office, and I remember like bankers boxes of information on Bowie's
The catalog
contracts
and the mechanical
and sales.
royalties and all this
Yes,
stuff. Yeah.
showing up in our office, and it was just it was super cool. And so we helped put that transaction together. And we weren't the bank that issued it, obviously,
Yeah.
but it was neat, really, really neat to work on. And then from there, I ended up most of the street firms would end up poaching people from the different big five because everybody had an arm that did these consulting jobs and did these auditing jobs. And so I ended up then going from there to First Chicago because again I was a little impatient. I thought I wanted to work in a New York firm, but when First Chicago came with a job offer, I'm like, I'll take it. But that was also fantastic because we were a smaller group, and you could have your hands in different things. So I went over there to be the structurer for a growing ABS group, it's asset-backed securitization group in Chicago, and it was neat. And we mainly co-led deals. We didn't. While I was there, we didn't really do a lot of deals of our own, but it was a great deal to learn because we always had a street bank was on the other side with us, and I was able to build transactions still working with structures at other desks, and so that was really cool. And then what was also really neat was while we were there, the bank went through a lot of changes. First Chicago to Bank One, and then Bank One ended up hiring this guy who had recently been fired himself, but named Jamie Dimon.
You
And
might have heard
so,
of him.
yeah, and so he came. So one of my little tiny claims to fame that means nothing, but was that at one point in time, Jamie Dimon knew my name. We used to have the all hands meetings, and Dimon, having come from the street, he liked the capital markets side, shocker, and we were starting to really do some deal flow finally, and so I mean, we would have cocktails, and I had plenty number of conversations with Jamie Dimon sitting, or standing, I should say, with a drink, 5 feet away from me. I was, there he is, Jamie Dimon. But clearly, I didn't stay there while.
Well, you had to go find some other job came knocking, and you didn't You're not the lead at JP Morgan, but
Yeah.
you're doing all right.
Well,
What happened?
well, it's not so much. I don't know if it's a job came knocking, or as I was knocked out of the job.
Yeah.
That job was the first job I was ever fired from, because of we got the managing director that I was working for. We butted heads, and I think that I probably, looking back, not probably, I know I pushed for myself to be promoted above my pay ability, or above my abilities, right? And so I should have been an associate, but I pushed to get promoted to director. I got promoted, and I probably couldn't do the job that well. And so my MD probably was frustrated with me, maybe justifiably so. I don't know. And so at some point, and I I think this has probably happened to many folks who didn't get fired for it. But at some point, I put together a pitch book, and lots of these pitch books were copy paste, you know, types of situations. And I forgot to switch the name of one of the previous client.
Yeah. That's rough. That's rough.
And literally, he came back from a meeting, slammed the pitch book down, said, "Come into this conference room." Sat down. He said, "You're fired." And that was it. So I needed to find another job. Ended up being the absolute best thing, because it got me from the banking side into the asset management side. But it was pretty stressful at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Now, just curious, and I don't know when in timeline it happens. So this is a general question. Is it you on your own at this point? Have you met your wife yet? Like, what's the life situation?
Yeah. So I'm still single. I mean, I was dating somebody fairly seriously in Chicago at the time, but it was not my wife to be. And so obviously I thought I was going to be in Chicago for the rest of my life. But in the end, just like the job took me from New York to Chicago, a job took me from Chicago to Atlanta. And I was sure, and this was 2001, late 2001. And I was sure that I was going to go to Atlanta, do a couple of years. It turned out at ING Investments, do a couple of years there, stay as long as I needed to for my resume, and then go back to an actual city, like New York, Chicago, or LA or San Francisco. So obviously that's not what happened. I'm sitting here chatting with you from Atlanta, but I would say that that's that move from the banking trading side to the asset management side and the portfolio management side. That was where I would say my education really started, because I ended up going to work for a really good boss who asked all the questions. And it was super annoying to work for him at the time, because you always thought, why is this guy doubting me? What did I do wrong? What am I ever going to get this right? But in the end, I realized that those were all the right questions. When I say questions, like, I went from only thinking about, even though I was a subprime banker and transaction structurer, and I would type into my either Wall Street Analytics or Intex, I would type in assumptions for losses and stuff. it was all very, very nebulous. It was nothing that I really ever had to think about, because if we were just pumping these deals out and somebody else was buying them. And prior to that, I had only worked with AAA government insured,
The
cash
Fannie,
flows.
the Freddie, all that stuff. You're not
Right.
thinking about it like this. Right.
Well, when I moved on to the asset management side at ING, and we were actually buying these securities for the most part, because for the most part it was like many insurance companies, it's a buy and hold idea. You would trade out of stuff sometimes, but the idea would be to hold to maturity. Suddenly, the credit risk became really important, and I had to go from being a banker, a relationship manager, and a structurer, whatever, all that kind of thing, to a credit analyst. And that was something that I never really did before. And it was against my grain initially, because I have a trusting personality. I like to trust that people, are going to do the right thing, that everybody's going to do their job. But when you become a credit analyst, you have to force yourself to doubt everything. You have to assume almost the opposite. How are these guys going to not pay? What are the things that are going to keep this transaction from working as it's supposed to, and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember when my partner and I, because the two of us were managing the subprime book, and my partner and I wanted to invest in the residuals of subprime transactions, and these are short cash flows. It doesn't matter for our little discussion here, but we did our little analysis, and we went and sat in front of our boss and presented it to him, and he's like, "Well, okay, I'm going to need you to model this out." And I said, "What do you mean? We have Intex. I just ran the deal through there. I ran multiple deals. And he's like, "No, if you want to buy this stuff, you're going to have to build a spreadsheet and show me everything that happens in this deal." And so I'm like, wow, I've written the code to do these deals. I've read the prospectuses and edited them in different jobs, but I've never had to amortize each loan.
Right. Build a full model from the ground up. This is your first.
Yep. And so we had to do that. We did that, and they ended up being good investments, because they were early enough and before the financial crisis. But then we were trying to increase our exposure to subprime. And this would have been 2005 or so. And this is another time we sit down in front of our boss. And he says, he's like, "Okay," we present him all this stuff. "Okay, this is how the payments are going. This is the this is the way they do the collections. This is the blah, 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 the foreclosure timelines and all this kind of stuff." And he's looking at it. He looks up, he says, "Okay, let me ask you this question. What if there's massive fraud?" And we're like, I remember looking at what do you mean? He's like, what if there's massive fraud? What if these loans aren't really what they're purported to be? What if the properties aren't there? And we're like, what? What do you mean? How could that be possible, right? Obviously, spoiler alert, there was massive fraud, and he was right, and he made us doubt all this stuff in the best way, and so that's where I sort of got my real education in becoming an investor. Frankly, I was on Wall Street for 15 years before I think I would consider myself worthy of being even saying that I'm an investor at all.
It is another case, though, of the drum pad and the clarinet and whatever else to landing on guitar, right? Because it's another case of learning all these different skill sets and corners to be at the point where you can build the full model and then have the manager look at you and say, okay, now what if this thing that doesn't even exist as a reference in your mind yet?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. It's
wild.
I mean, and it's one of these things where, it takes hindsight to look back and say, okay, well, this is what happened. This is this guy, the massive fraud question. I mean, after I left ING, which was also the second job I was fired from, because of, again, I was so hard headed up through my 40s. I butted heads with. There were two of us up for promotion. The other guy got the promotion, and I wasn't a big enough person to get past that and just work for him and just do a good job, right? And so that ended up eventually we had a falling out. But looking back, I've had subsequent conversations with my boss and with this other guy, coworker, who became my boss, and I'm just like, I remember just reaching out and saying, listen, now with some time in between, I could see that it was probably my fault.
Yeah.
And so, when we're all friends now, which is a true thing, because of then you realize that everybody was having their own challenges. Here's a person who was, you compete as you work together as equals. One gets promoted, one doesn't. Now the equal has to be somehow the leader. And I never thought of the imposter syndrome that he was feeling on the other side, which turned out to be a very real thing. And so there was, you just don't understand until later a lot of these things that you go through, and that other people are going through their own thing.
It's a tough and essential lesson to learn. That's really interesting to hear you unpack that now. And I'm glad you're still friends. I know there's still a couple more jobs in the mix here. What's the financial crisis experience like for you, given the corner of the world you're operating out of?
Yeah. So it was, again, this is my got there just a little too late. So while I was at ING, and then even when I left ING and went to work for SunTrust in their ABS department, and to become, you'll love this, to become a CDO manager. So we were going to issue CDOs. Well,
it's a good business. Just get in on this here, John.
Right.
Come on.
Well, and so that's the thing. We watched people that we literally knew from conferences or chatting on the phone or all that stuff, get lifted out of banks to become CDO managers and to just print money. And they were just making money hand over fist, just throwing together these billion-dollar deals. And we're like, well, we can do that. And so first, I did have a good time for a short period of time working at SunTrust. And we did issue a CDO. Here's the funny thing. We thought that it was, we felt that we were, who doesn't? Okay, I'm gonna say this. Who doesn't always feel like they're slightly better than the other guy? We felt we were slightly better than most of the other CDO issuers out there. Why? I don't know. Just because of hubris, I guess. But it turns out that we did do a good job putting together that deal, because after the financial crisis started, one of my partners kept track of that particular CDO, and it lasted like at least half a year longer than most other CDOs. Like that deal didn't default for 6 to 9 months after most of the other issuances defaulted of the same ilk. So
It was
that
staying
seemed like a
alive,
good thing.
baby. That one was
Yeah.
good.
But before that, what happened? We finally got lifted out by Citi partnered with my bosses, and our whole group lifted out to become a CDO manager here in Atlanta, and we were in business from February of 2007 to November of 2007.
God. Oh my
And
goodness.
it was fantastic. And this was where, I want to say that somehow I managed to not take advantage of these opportunities. This wasn't really my fault. We begged our coverage to let us sell credit default swaps against all of these transactions, just like the guys in The Big Short did. Right? We were begging them, but we didn't have any capital to put against it, and so if the trade went against us, somebody would have been on the hook, and that we didn't. The bank didn't feel confident. It's looking back, everything seems so obvious, but during 2007, there was still a lot of thought that it wouldn't be that big of a deal. That
Ring fenced. It was ring fenced. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on a weekly basis, we'd be like, dude, what about this deal? This deal is crap. Can't we just at least, short this deal? And they would be like, no, sorry guys. And so we just ran out of work to do because they wanted us to issue a transaction. We couldn't find any creditworthy collateral to put into the transaction. And so you can't be a CDO manager without any CDOs. So eventually we just went out of business. We ran out of runway. And then it really was then you were getting into the crisis. And my other brush with potential fortune was one of my partners we were put together with TPG, which is a hedge fund group out of Texas, and we got a commitment to buy distressed CDOs, and so we put together a fund to do I think it was like $300 million, and we housed ourselves within it actually turned out to be within a subprime servicer that was headquarters here, Auckland, financial here in Atlanta, and we would call up the banks and we'd be like, hey, I know you guys own this, we'll buy it from you, and these conversations were so funny because I'm sure they were happening, all over. But they'd be like, oh, this is great. Oh, awesome. We'll sell it to you for 95 cents on the dollar. What's your offer? And
9. We'd like
yeah.
9 cents.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. And so we sat there building our models and running, scenarios and doing all that stuff for 8 or 9 months until finally we got on one of our calls. They're like, you know what? I think we're gonna hit that. And so all the paperwork was going through, and meanwhile the TARP is happening. The government is trying to bail out the banks in different ways. Hank Paulson is doing his thing, and so we are 2 weeks away from closing, and then they bail out the banks with the actual capital, as opposed to simply backstopping things. And we got a phone call that said, you know what, we don't need your money anymore. And so that closed the doors on that. And of course, my partner, because he's, I guess, is it masochist? Is that when you hurt, like hurting yourself?
Yeah, you got
That's
it
the
right.
one. So he kept track of we were about to buy 2 deals from this one bank, and he kept track of them. And our personal bonuses, the way we had structured the deal, our comp, I mean, it would have been like 16 million. I mean,
But who's keeping score?
right,
Who's
right.
counting?
I'm like, dude, why are you telling me this? He would call me up. We were both unemployed. I'm like, why are you?
Never forget the 2 commas that could be in your bank account right now
Yeah.
if the government.
So I
didn't
just
do
got,
this.
so that whole process just made me so angry. That's why I closed the door on finance and Wall Street, and just, that's how I got into the sushi business, which was, obviously, not obviously, but in retrospect, it was not the right decision, but it's the one I made.
And you stuck with it for a minute here too. So you decide Wall Street chews you up and spits you out, or at least the job chews you up and spits you out. And this just, we go through this stuff. This is everybody who's a business owner. I also love, and I'm just pointing it out, that the running money and doing the distressed fund when you did, that is owning and operating a business, not just being a brilliant fund manager or something. And the actually owning and operating reality is really, really friggin' hard. And we don't often get those stories. So I love that you're sharing that. Sushi, though, that's also owning and operating a business. Give me the business idea. Tell me about, this is one of the business school buddies. How does this?
Yeah. So
how
a
does
friend
this
of mine,
start?
from business school, he was a super entrepreneurial guy, and so always wanted to do something other than work for corporate, and so he was looking for a business to do it. He was thinking, he looked at different things like hot dogs, even, but turned out his mom
Worked
ran
for
a
Danny Meyer. That hot dog
Yes.
stand turned into Shake Shack. So,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
sorry, another one. Oh.
No, that's okay.
Salt in the
That's
wound
okay.
there too.
Listen, the people that do this well, there's a place in Atlanta called King of Pops, and they developed that business right around the same time that I was doing the sushi, and they just chose a business that worked a little better, and also, by the way, something I learned: fresh food is really difficult. Frozen food, much easier, right, to deal with, because it doesn't spoil immediately.
Are you telling me perishable raw fish is a hard business to scale? Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about unrealistic expectations. I knew enough from my operations classes in business school to think that I could put together this business in a workable fashion, and I think I think we did, but just scaling turned out to be very difficult, because basically what we wanted to do was, my friend had started a business where he did grab and go sushi. It sounds like that's a great idea, but then you're limited to what you can sell from people walking in and grabbing their sushi and going. And so I was like, well, what can we do? How can we make this an expandable business model? Can we do more deliveries? And who do we deliver to? If we deliver to corporate accounts, then they can just buy in bulk. And that was sort of the goal. And we ended up doing it. We had 4 locations at the peak of our little business. The Atlanta location was the biggest. We ended up selling sushi to places like the University of Georgia, Georgia State, Emory, uh, almost every hospital in the Atlanta metro area. And so it was really, really cool. We even sold sushi to the Atlanta public schools. That was a crazy, crazy deal because it's sort of one of these things where that was, for me, that was a typical dog chasing the car. What happens when they catch it kind of thing. Always looking for new ways to increase our production. And schools their cafeterias are, captive audience.
Kids
it's a
need
great thing.
lunches.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
chocolate milk and sushi. Interesting. Haven't ever kept it.
yeah, that maybe that wouldn't be the mix that we would go for, but I remember reaching out to them and talking with the head chef, and always being kind of put off, and did a presentation or two, and then, like, probably at least a year after we first started chatting, it was early summer, so that it would have been in preparation for the coming school year. I got a call for them, or a call from them, and said, "Hey, you know what? I think we want to do the sushi thing." I'm like, "Oh, yes." And they're like, how about on August, whatever, 12, can you deliver 18,000 pieces of sushi? And and I mean, like,
Again, dog
like,
caught bumper. This is the right
yes.
analogy here.
And we worked it out such that we'd stagger deliveries, and we'd do all these things. And we ended up delivering there for a year or two, before I sold the company. And it was great, and it was exciting, and it was super gratifying to go into a school and sample the sushi and see kids that maybe would never have eaten sushi before in their lives, try it and be like, "Ooh, this is not bad." And so it was super fun. Not super profitable, but super fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. So take us to the end of the sushi business. And I'm going to ask the question again. Surely at some point here, have you met the person who is now your wife?
Yes. So it's a good question and relevant here, because I did, while I was at ING, while I was attempting to not lose money managing subprime mortgage investments. I met my wife, and we got married in 2006.
How
And
do you meet her at ING? Because it's not like she wasn't trading derivatives or something, right? Like,
no, so I didn't meet her at ING. I met her while I was at ING. I met her at a bar, and it was, like many of these situations, right? Where I don't call it kismet, but she had just graduated from her. They had her fellowship, had a graduation party. And so she's an anesthesiologist, and she had done a fellowship in cardiac anesthesiology. And her friends are like, "We have to go out to celebrate." And she's like, "I don't want to. One glass of wine. That's it." And we ended up meeting. So, that's the short story of it. And there really is
one glass of wine and a good husband later. But all right, so she's with you from ING on. You guys are together at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but in 2013, we realized we're going to have a kid, and we do have one, and she's a anesthesiologist who gets called into the hospital at different hours. She has on-call nights and weekends and things like that. And by this point in time, we had shifted our sushi production to overnight, so it would be as fresh as possible when we delivered it for lunches to folks. And so the first evening that we have a baby across the hall from us, and she's on call, And I got a call from my general manager at the sushi shop that there's a problem and I need to come, to the store, and I can't because of what if she gets called in? She can't not go. So anyway, point is, right then and there, I looked at her. I'm like, I got to get out of this business. And of course, the first thing she said was, "Finally." The second,
Thanks to the support.
Yeah.
Finally.
No, she was way too supportive.
Right.
Oddly enough, it would have been better if she would have been less supportive, and I would have cut my losses in the sushi business earlier on. But I'm stubborn, and I just wanted to make something of it. And so, but anyway, super lucky. I feel like any small business owner who actually sells their business versus just shuts it down is just super lucky, because you have to find somebody who has either the same idea or believes that they can do this business as well or better than you. And it's not their baby, right? I mean, this sushi thing was for better or worse, it was sort of my baby. And even though, like many babies and kids, you dislike them a lot of times, you also want to help them grow up. And so I've obviously was lucky enough to find somebody who was willing to buy it. And I mean, that was like the day that those papers were signed and the money got wired over. I mean, that was probably the most relief that I may ever feel in my whole life.
Unbelievable. And it's wild too, where it's that interplay with your wife in that moment of being like, you're on call with lives on the line. I'm on call with lunch on the line. Right. And it's like, we have to make an adult decision here. And you've made lots of adult decisions in the, at the PM level before, but this is the first real life allocation decision when you got that baby in that other room. That is pressure. Like I understand the relief comment you just made deeply because of that. All right. I'm plugging another appearance. I want to give how did we get here? The Jess Boston, Mark Newfield podcast. If you want to hear the financial planner part that really starts here, they do a much deeper dive than I'm about to give this justice to, because I want to get to questions before we run out of time. But you sell the business, you decide you want to kind of stick in and around finance. We know you're a financial planner now. Give me that bridge. What's the short form version of that bridge?
The short form bridge is that, yes, I do just like my mom did essentially with me. I do a stay-at-home dad thing for a number of years. When our son goes into kindergarten, I decide that we make the decision, that as a family, that I should do actual work again. And I want to say clearly, but maybe it's not clear to everybody, because I think this is important for folks to know when they're stepping away from a career. If they step away, they think they're going just on a sabbatical or something like that. It's very hard to get back into a career.
Yes, it is.
After any time off. So let's just put it out there. Doesn't matter how good I might have been at my PM jobs in asset-backed or whatever, no one was going to hire me to run a portfolio that I haven't worked in a business I haven't worked in 7 years or something like that. It's just not happening. So if I want to do finance, what am I going to do? One of my friends was trying also to get into finance, and this is where I give him a lot of credit, and people have said to me, why do you give him credit? He tried to recruit you into an MLM. But a friend of mine was he connected with a IUL shop and selling life insurance, but he wanted somebody who knew something about investing to partner with because, to his credit, he knew that these folks that he was going to talk to didn't want to just buy an IUL from him. They wanted, in theory, some financial help. And so we were going to build a viable business under this MLM structure that was done the right way, if you want to, for lack of a better term.
Giant air quotes. Like, we can
Yes.
do this right. Sure, we're next to this thing that's strangely shaped like a pyramid,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
surely this creates the cover for us to build an actual business.
Right. Again, spoiler alert, not possible, didn't happen. But what it did was get me back into finance. It got me licensed up again. It got me thinking again about that side of the business. It got me learning more about personal finance versus institutional investment. And it made me think about, because of the experience trying to build a credible business within an MLM and discovering that it's not possible, in my opinion, it got me thinking about how would I want to structure a business from the ground up, from an advisory standpoint. And that's when, again, it's really funny how I got my first job on Wall Street from a friend from high school because of his cousin. And I have a flat fee RIA because another friend of mine from high school started a flat fee RIA a few years prior to that, after having spent time trying to sell insurance in the right way. You wouldn't find a guy with more integrity than my friend Jack, who runs this other company, SafeBridge. And I remember a discussion I had with him when I was trying to do this, and I said to him, he said, "What are you trying to do?" And I explained it to him. He's like, "Talk to me in 6 months." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He's like, I could try to tell you, but talk to me in 6 months. And he was right. I called him up about half a year later. I'm like, I can't do this. What do I do? He's like, guess what? You can run a flat fee RIA. You can manage money for people. You can do it the right way. You can do it the way that you want to do it for them. Maybe I'll show you how.
Something about having somebody who says, I need you to get this education first before you're ready for me to teach you the part that I can actually teach you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. It's so huge. And it's really what's hard about, I think, the discussions that people have online, especially on investments, and personal finance side of investing, because of, you want it. I mean, I'm an index investor. I don't think that I can choose investments for people. I am not going to choose winners. I can't do it. I say this because I thought for years that I was choosing investments and winners for the portfolios that I was managing. And despite the fact that we outperformed our indices and looked like stars, and it looked like we were choosing the right investments, it was just because we were taking risk in different ways. And so I'm coming at it with this, in my opinion, knowledge that of what I cannot do. But you don't know what you can't do until you try it and you fail at it, or you see where you're like, oh my God, I didn't fail, but I really should have.
Life is tricky like that. I have a ton of notes that I think that point just keeps showing up, because the literally, like, the first thing I have like circled here in my notes is it's hard to know what you can do if you never had to do it. And this is part of the thing until you start to uncover and unpack that. And this shows up over and over and over again. I mean, it shows up with your parents figuring out and obviously starting a family late, but then all the ways you learn just the way it is, your mom stories and internalizing those. And I want to jump to this. Here's some important parts that I want to ask you about. So first off, you don't have to dox who she is. Do we know where the pre-8th grade girl who you were in academic competition with, do we know where she is now? Is she running a major bank? Do we know what happened to her?
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
And I think, this is going back probably even before I was married. I think I tried to see as a curiosity, like when Facebook first got opened up to people who were not in college. Right? I was an early Facebook adopter. That's when you look to try to find these people. I could not find her.
All right. We're going to assume she's like Jamie Dimon level somewhere in the world right now.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, this makes perfect sense in my mind, at least. Okay. Now I want to jump to this whole churches thing. I am going to be laughing for a really long time about you thinking all the kids go to different masses and you're just narrowly missing them.
Yes.
I think that's fantastic. But there's a connection to the Notre Dame thing, the confidence that the school had in their mission. I'm curious what you think about that now, because I'm not comparing verbatim your current business to Notre Dame or the church in any way, shape, or form. But there is a confidence in mission thing. Do you see a connection between how the school had that confidence in who they were and what they were doing and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think so, actually.
I feel it.
You have to, whether, I think as a person, or as an institution, without that confidence, like that's the whole shifting sands idea, right? I can't remember the specific biblical, story, right? But there's a line about the sand and the whatnot, foundations. But I think you have to have that, and we don't all just magically start out with it, right? And you can lose it, but hopefully you don't. Hopefully instead you gain it. And that's, if I bring something to the table to my clients, and to hopefully family, I hope it's that, that type of confidence that I don't mind saying I don't know. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to find it out. So that's hopefully that's a goal.
It's definitely a goal. And that's the comfort with the existence of the doubt. That's being, hey, I'm in this class, but I'm going to learn about Gilgamesh. And just going, yeah, that's there. We're not hiding this. But let's talk about it.
Yeah.
What about another where is he now? On the MBS desk, the buddy who gets you the job. Like, still in the business?
Never really entered the business. Ended up going to law school after Notre Dame, became a successful attorney.
Well, that works too. Love this story about the Bowie Bonds. I love Jamie Dimon knowing your name at one point. Don't love, but I fully understand the getting fired. It's in that progression, though, of like learning to do something really deep, getting to brush with some people who are also on their ladder on the way up. But then the person who I think maybe the most profound impact to me is that boss. And what about this guy, the one who called out, who asked all the questions? Where's that guy now?
Retired, enjoying.
Oh, fantastic!
Enjoying retirement because of, he didn't get himself fired.
Do you feel like with him, because you come to this realization later when you said we all feel, especially in this business, there's all that we feel like we're slightly better than the other person. We have some slight edge, some slight advantage, and we're going to capitalize on it. That guy with all the questions, how do you think he understood that?
So we talked about that, he and I, a little bit, maybe not in those specific words, but I discovered that he also felt very uncomfortable. He felt that he was placed in a seat that he wasn't sure he deserved. If not, maybe deserved isn't the right word, but maybe he was fully prepared for. And so he wasn't, I mean, he's probably smarter than me. So he's smart. He thought to ask these questions. He wasn't going to leave himself in an uncovered position. And what I will say is that the folks that were working at the time that I was there in upper management at ING, a lot of them were really good. And so when you went to present before credit committee, you knew you were going to get really good questions. So if you didn't war game out the type of inquiries that you would just get slapped down and denied. And so I think he knew better than us what we were going to have to deal with, because if we were going to move forward with tens of millions of dollars of allocation, it would start with him, but then we would have to go present to higher up committee. And so he didn't want to leave himself exposed, and I think that was really smart.
So interesting, that learning how to never leave yourself covered and actually to survive, and that's why he's happy and retired. I wrote down in the margins of my notes on this one, I think if nothing else for the sushi business, we got to get Adam Sandler, do a Lunch Lady Land, and we'll get Hoagies and Grinders and Stoj Boy Sushi in there. Maybe whatever that app is where you do celebrity requests for songs.
Oh, yeah.
Loads. I wonder if Adam Sandler's on there.
I love that app. I did. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Hill.
I don't know. Who's Dave Hill?
Okay, so Dave Hill is a comedian. He's fantastic. But he did a fundraiser on that app, Cameo, I think is what
Cameo,
it's called, right?
That's what it's called, yeah.
And his fundraiser was he would sing any Billy Joel song that you wanted him to sing. And so I made a donation, and he did Zanzibar, my favorite Billy Joel song. And so it was fantastic.
You are New Jersey through and through. If Zanzibar is your favorite Joel song, that's phenomenal. All right, I got to point this out before you're going to tell all the people where to find you. I want people to listen to their friends, and you are truly an undying example of listening to your friends. But even if that friend is, this pre-8th grade girl that you're competing with, or the internship, or the person who gets the desk promotion, or your family, or the guy who brought you into the sushi business, or the guy who almost brought you into a multi-level marketing scheme, listen to your friends, but maybe not in the ways that they're always telling you right up front, because there's some real life lessons in there. John Stoj, people want to find you on the internet. They want to connect with you, learn more. Where should they look you up?
Well, I think, Matt, you mentioned it earlier, but almost every, for better or for worse, and most social media, I am Stoj Boy is my handle, STOJBOJ, making a not a pun, but I don't know what kind of rhyme you'd call it, off of the Polish pronunciation of J as a Y.
Yeah, you got it.
And then people could always look me up at my firm's website, verbatimfinancial.com.
Fantastic. Well, John, this is so great to get the rest of this story, because I did not know this. I thank you for the time today. You're a truly intentional investor. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you're watching The Intentional Investor so more people can find our show. You can follow Matt directly at cultishcreative.com or at cultishcreative on Twitter. For more great content at the intersection of investing and life, check out epsilontheory.com or at epsilontheory on Twitter.